That's right. We are here. We are now back. Hello, with interviews. We've been, of course, listening to some of our interviews and remarks that we had when we were up there in Charlotte, and of course then down there at the Republicans in Tampa. Today I have Dr. Chad Kinsella with me, and of note, today is Constitution Day, and Dr. Kinsella, what does that really mean to all of us here today?
Well, it's an important day because, again, that's a key document. That's how it sets up our government, sets up our freedom. So very, very important. It almost goes without saying. A very key document that dictates everything. So
yeah, I thought it was very interesting that at 4,400 words, it's the oldest and the shortest constitution of any major government.
Yes, and again, if you could, there's some state constitutions that are actually almost all of them are longer than the federal. Was Alabama, I think, has the longest, and it's 300,000 words. So if you try to download it, if you try to read it, good luck.
Well, that's very interesting because, that's exactly reverse to what we usually think of. We usually think of the federal government as being very verbose and our state governments being a little bit more with brevity and trying to maintain their own powers within the state.
True, and they do it, well, they maybe in that way, but anything with their constitution. It was that South Dakota actually has written what inmates have to make in prison. I think they have to do quilting or something like that. It's in this. I think it's
in the Constitution.
It's in their Constitution. So again, they were very, in several instances, very specific. So again,
well, then you'd have to have a big amendment, wouldn't you, to change things? You'd have to have people vote on it, wouldn't you?
I would imagine so. I mean, it'll differ from state to state, but yeah, if to change the Constitution, you have to typically vote on it. It'll go back to the people.
So what's been happening over at Lander?
Well, we just got started with classes, and Dr. McMillan and 5 of our students, we just got back from the Democratic National Convention, really I guess the pre-convention, and I've been behind ever since. So I'm trying to still get caught up. But it's a good semester. I have teaching a class on presidential campaigns and elections. So it's been a fun class so far.
Absolutely.
Lots to talk about.
Sure. And so what happens after November 6th then with this class?
We're going to have to try to wrap it up, I guess. Kind of talk about post-mortem, why people decided what they decided, and kind of wrap some things up. Yeah, I was a little worried about that the energy in the class might drop off a bit after the election, but still about a month or more left of classes, so got to find something to keep it interesting at that point. But right now they're pretty entertained.
I bet they are. Now, I understand with Constitution, you've actually been celebrating Constitution Week over there at Lander.
Yeah, through the American Democracy Project. It's an organization on campus, and we actually had today, despite my efforts to accidentally squelch it, we had students register to vote. So we had several faculty and students volunteer to sit at a table to try to register voters, and that's something we also did last week. And there's some basically questions on tables in the cafeteria where you can ask kind of constitutional questions, maybe why is freedom of speech important to you, or what do you think about gun rights, or whatever it might be, and people can kind of scribble their answers on the table. So trying to get them engaged and let them know that it is Constitution Week, and let them know just how important that document is for us here in the United States.
That's very interesting. I would be interested to know what the students thought of the last week when our Libyan ambassador and the 4 others were killed. The supposedly part of the background to that, plus what has happened in Egypt, was this internet Muslim movie. I would be interested to know what they feel about it. Should we still have freedom of speech, or should it not be?
Well, sadly, I guess we haven't had a chance really to talk too much about that with some of the students. Some of my some of the better students have kind of mentioned that. I think a lot of them, I don't think they want to get rid of freedom of speech. I think that would be hard pressed to find many students who would. It seems like just from the few I've talked to, and I can't say this is a representative of the entire Lander School, a lot of them feel like that the movie this was going to happen anyway, and that the movie was some sort of a justification for those actions. So that seems to be kind of the overall attitude,
consensus
from the maybe handful of students literally that I've talked to about
from
it.
the small percentage of those that you have talked to.
Yeah, this is not a representative poll, by the way. So it's just the opinions of a couple of students that I've talked to. So they don't feel that freedom of speech should be gone, and it seems like nobody has seen that movie. At least none of the students, and I know I have not seen the movie. And I guess I was reading something about it that the actors in it were even duped into doing this movie and had no idea what they were doing.
Exactly.
And some of them have come out and apologized. So it's kind of a very bizarre and interesting and ultimately sad story that comes out with that movie.
Yeah, but after all, we are supposed to have freedom of expression. The arts have always strived to be able to be free of encumbrances of holding them back from being able to express. And you know what? You can always walk out, can't you?
Yeah.
And you can change the channel.
As I was walking out of school yesterday, I think it was MSNBC or CNN that was on, and I happened to kind of look up and catch, and there was one of the pundits or whatever on CNN, I think is what the station was talking about, you can see there are movies that I've seen. I'm sure there's movies everybody's seen. That could make you angry or you just don't feel comfortable with. I don't do horror movies very well, so it's, you can get up and leave. But watching a movie that makes you angry does not give you the right to commit crimes or especially kill someone because you are
angry.
Because you're angry. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to teach my two kids. Don't hit each other because someone stole your toy. So. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Exactly. But I just thought that was an interesting aside on that. Now, we wanted to talk about today. I, of course, went to the Republican one. Y'all went to the Democratic one. What did your students, how many students did you take?
We ended up taking 5 students.
5 students?
5 students.
And you were there actually before it pretty well started, is that correct?
It was almost like a pre-convention. So the 7 of us ultimately, it was Dr. McMillan, myself, and 5 students got to Rock Hill. And we stayed in Rock Hill. It was nice. We had a couple of speakers, and we kind of talked about what the convention was. There was a lawyer from Charlotte came and talked about the fact they had to set up these free speech zones. And
free speech zones?
Yes, or
did we have zones that were not free speech?
Well, there were. If Charlotte was on lockdown, for lack of a better term, and literally the streets were fenced in, and they had zones where it really was a big part of the protest for the Occupy movement. And it was neat because we also they had somebody from the Occupy movement come to talk to our group, and he was very eloquent in what he said. So it was really, and he was very upset about the free speech zones, and they had there was.
Today, actually, or was it yesterday, was actually the anniversary of 1 year from Occupy Wall Street.
That's right, yeah. I think they had some protests and things that went on in New York. But they were very upset, and I guess they called them, I can't remember what they called them, but the original name in Boston, where they called them free speech cages. And literally it was kind of this little fenced-in area. You could go and have access to a microphone provided by the city of Charlotte and speak your mind, and you had a 30-minute, and then you had to let somebody else go. And I don't think that they were very pleased with that, or the fact that they were very where they could go and where they could protest was very limited. Of course, though, in the city of Charlotte was interesting. When they set out to pass this ordinance, essentially at the city level, they called the ACLU and said, what can we do to make sure this is legal? And it was kind of unprecedented that Charlotte had no lawsuit, freedom of speech lawsuit before the convention. So whatever they did, I guess it worked. The Occupy people were clearly not happy with it, but they were not able to. They didn't have a lawsuit, so Charlotte was successful in that respects.
Lots of security.
Oh, security!
Tremendous amount of security.
I have never in my life ever felt that there was too much security, except for I think in Charlotte. To their credit, I think that Charlotte planned for between, I think they said 8,000 and 10,000 protesters that were supposed to hit the streets on Sunday, and only 700 showed up. So there was a huge discrepancy between what they expected and what they didn't. But it was incredible.
And the amount of police that they brought in from other cities, like Chicago. I asked one directions and all of a sudden realized, why was I asking him? He had Chicago on his sleeve.
You were more likely to run into somebody from out of town than I think in town. There was a lot of Charlotte police, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Atlanta. Rock Hill even had a presence in Charlotte. So, they had a little bit of everybody from all over the place. So it was big, and the Secret Service, and we actually went. We were trying to find the protest, where the Occupy movement was camping out. We went the wrong way we were on the right street, but went the wrong way, and we passed by the Federal Reserve Bank. And it was really interesting. I mean, Secret Service, lots of police, mounted police, and there was actually a National Guard Humvee there, and they
had no sense of humor, did they?
None. The Secret Service guys, there's no sense of humor.
They never smile.
No, they don't.
I
I don't see them. I have a friend who's in the Secret Service, but he used to smile. I don't know if they had him quit or what, but
they wiped it off of him, huh?
Definitely wiped it. I'm sure he wiped it off of him. But yeah, so it was very heavy security. And mounted police on bikes, motorcycles. They traveled around in groups. They were carrying around. You could not help but notice very large sticks that they were carrying around. So I mean, they were very prevalent.
Yes.
And very out in the open, and they had fenced off all of the banks, and they had police and even private security, within the perimeter of the banks. It's very, very tight security.
Yeah, I was disappointed because I had wanted to combine going to the NASCAR museum up there, and of course they had closed that down. In fact, they closed down most of the activities that I would have wanted to have been open because of the opportunity to show off.
It was. Charlotte was closed down. I have a cousin who lives in Charlotte, and I tried to get in touch with her, and she said, I took a week's vacation. I left the city. So she lives downtown, but she left. So I mean,
they were literally almost in a lockdown, weren't they?
It was. Some of my students said, why didn't they just declare martial law? Because at times it felt that secured, and there was so much security, and it was at times some of my students were very open that they felt uncomfortable and they did not like. Of course, I had a Ron Paul supporter in the group, so I mean he was very, very I think he was upset about most of the things that happened there, but he was very upset about the security and felt that was not a good precedent in his opinion. So even I would even go as far as to say it was a bit uncomfortable at times because it was so prevalent and there's so many police all over the place.
Yeah. All right. Well, I tell you what, I am here with Dr. Chad Kinsella from over there at Lander University. We're going to be talking all about these issues. We are going to talk a little bit maybe about the latest polls, what's going to be, what's happening, what he feels, how he can interpret the data as he sees it. So if you've got a question or a comment, don't hesitate to give us a call, 229-7984. That's 229-7984. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Oh, that's right. We're right back here. If you've got a question for Dr. Chad Kinsella from over there at Lander, political science, that's his specialty, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that affected what they did up there at the Democratic Convention, first convention that you went to.
It is the first convention that I've been to, yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. It is an amazing experience. Now, just from my perspective, when I was there, I kind of felt like I was, that it was all about the caucus, all about the caucuses, all about the special interests, whereas the Republican ones seemed to take it from the perspective that we are Americans and everything was inclusive. A little bit different philosophy at the Democratic Convention.
It was. We actually got to attend. I know Dr. McMillan and two of our students, Tanisha and Ariel, we went to the Faith-Based Council. And it was all, they had brought basically a representative from every major religion came and spoke. And I know 4 other of our students went to the Disabilities Caucus. And it was very interesting. They had a Veterans Caucus, they had an African American caucus, American
I think
Indian.
they had a Jewish American caucus.
I think there was a Jewish American caucus. I mean, every caucus that you could possibly imagine of people. I think
every type of group that there is a possibility from, they seem to have a caucus to talk to.
In that sense, they tried to be very, very inclusive. But it was really neat because I guess kind of going into conventions are not what they used to be, and really when I was wanting to go see really if they did any business, like endorse some sort of a plan or endorse some sort of a platform or anything, or voted at all on anything, and one of my students coined it best, it's kind of a pep rally. It's a lot of rah-rah, and got the everybody kind of whipped up and very excited. There's a lot of energy in the room.
What did you think about the, speaking of the platform, where they decided to put God back in, where they decided to put some things back in there that that it didn't appear like the vote really was for that.
Well, I was actually talking to one of my good friends, and he's he's now a lobbyist, but he's a political consultant. His name's Scott Sedmak. He's up in Ohio. Again, very brilliant as far as strategy. And his comment for that, and his comment, I guess Ron Paul, people tried to introduce something, and there was some confusion for a moment, and then bringing in Clint Eastwood. In politics, you have to stick to the script. If you deviate from the script,
talking about the Democratic one,
Democratic one or Republican one, any time at all, you have to stick to the script. And it ended up being a debate. It was an instant commercial, I think. I think the RNC or somebody made that where they
voted 3 times or yelled 3 times.
Yeah, yelled 3 times to and it was put God back in. But I think where some of the debate also was put God back in and recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Right.
And they had to do it 3 times. And I can't remember the gentleman's, was it Villagros? It was the mayor of Los Angeles was doing it, and he could have stuck to it, and regardless of what he heard, he said, eyes have it, and moved on from that point.
Right.
And it just got kind of out of hand at that point, he didn't know what to do, and you couldn't tell. It was at best 50-50.
Exactly.
So, and it was an instant commercial, because you saw people upset on both sides. That were some that wanted it back in. And Ted Strickland from Ohio was the one. He's a Methodist minister, and it's kind of almost something that would have seemed like it would have been an open and shut case, but it wasn't. And regardless of what he heard, and regardless, he probably should have just said "eyes have it" and moved on from that point. It became kind of a debacle at that point. So. Always, I guess, Scott, my friend's thing is, stick to the script. Do not deviate from the script, otherwise it'll be in trouble. And I think that was a really tough moment at the Democratic convention. That did not look good for them. I don't think.
Well, if it was 50-50, what should you have done? That's the question.
I guess depending upon what, I can't remember what the exact rules were, but if it's 50-50, they were going to have an actual vote. I think it would depend upon. And I don't remember the exact Democratic rules, but
there was
it's clearly not so. It was not easy to just say the ayes have it, but it probably should have done that and put the matter to bed.
I thought when that lady walked up there and said, it's almost like she was saying, "Just do it."
Yeah, I have no doubt that that's probably what she said. She's like, just get this thing through, because if they were it was going to take up more time, and the more often they did it, the more, I think, the angrier the both sides were yelling, and so.
It would have been a no-win situation.
Yeah, it was already a no-win situation. They just needed to put a quick end to it as quickly as possible. So yeah, never deviate. Again, if you ever do politics, never deviate from the script. That is when bad things happen, and it happened at both conventions when they deviated from the script, or had no script at all in the sense of Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. Well, you know what? When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Clint Eastwood. We're going to talk about some of the passions that there were. So I certainly hope you'll stay right with us right here on WCRS, right here in Greenwood, South Carolina. Hey, let's hear a quick word from South Carolina News, and we'll be right back.
Arg! Are you a pirate or a pack rat? Do you have a vacation of a lifetime sitting in the attic? Or a college tuition hung on a wall? Or is a fabulous retirement hidden in your jewelry box? Bring those items to Sharp Facets Gallery. We can establish value and buy from you or sell for you. And so ends another chapter at Sharp Facets Gallery, 72 Bypass, and on the web, sharpfacets.com.
Oh, that's right. I tell you what, I could use more time off mic here with Chad. Here we were talking about some interesting issues. One of the issues that we've been talking about is women. I said to Chad, do you understand this war on women? I don't really understand it. And actually, what did you tell me?
Well, ultimately, this kind of, I don't know if there's really a war on women, but there is a gender gap. And it's a very noted thing in political science, and we still talk about it. And really, this gender gap really started in presidential elections, basically back in 1980 with the first election of President Reagan. And it's really continued today. Democrats typically do much better with women than they do men.
Because?
Many different reasons. What they think, and there's probably a whole lot of different reasons, but Republicans have been seen as having a very kind of maybe a more forceful, kind of aggressive maybe aggressive is the wrong word, but more forceful policy. Particularly Reagan. He came out. I'm not going to be soft on communism. I'm going to try to
tear down the wall.
I'm going to tear down the wall. I'm going to put it to them. And what the polls have shown is that did not go over with women as well. And
I wonder how it would go over with women, though. Don't you think since the 1980s, women have changed dramatically? We used to be a lot more passive. Like right now, Chad.
Yeah.
Don't you think so? I mean, women unto themselves have changed.
They have, but I think as far as I think a lot of it centers around conflict and issues with conflict, and particularly international. And this is what the polling has done. And there's probably a whole lot more that goes into the mix of why this happens. But a lot of it is centered around the kind of this international and how Republicans and Democrats kind of go about doing that. And what it's ultimately translated into is an advantage. Women tend to vote more Democratic than men. And then also bad for Republicans, good for Democrats is women are turning out in higher numbers. Now, not by much, but they're turning out in higher numbers in elections now, and that's something unusual, and that hasn't really happened here in the United States. So,
don't you think it's a lot of it because women have become so concerned about the future?
Oh, definitely.
Their children, and they're very focused on their children and what is going to be the future of their children.
Yeah, and I do believe that's a big part of it. And I think, women, there's been a lot of effort to make sure that women are represented and that women do vote, because, women didn't have the right to vote in this country until 1920. Now, for us, it seems like a long time ago, but really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long ago. So women have been kind of out of this process for a long time. So there's been a marked move to try to get women involved, and
There's a big movement to get women involved in running for politics.
Yeah, there's an entire book I had to read as a graduate student on women in politics, and ultimately I think the conclusions of the book is they don't know why women don't run. But I think a big part of it is women still are seen as kind of the primary caregiver in the family, and you don't see many women in Congress that have families because it's very difficult. Well, yes, there are some, but it is something.
Well, what about our governor?
There's a couple of cases where it has worked, but overall, if you look at the total numbers, women are substantially underrepresented in Congress, and especially women of color and women with families. So I think that's been that's one of the conclusions from that they've done in research. But it's interesting, when women run, they win. When women run, they get as much or a lot of times more money than men. There's Republican and Democratic groups that specifically give money to women that run from their party. Emily's List, and I can't remember the Republican one, but they've done a lot with women, but there still aren't enough women running. So women out there, if you can, please do run for office. We need your voice. But what is happening with this gender gap is women are voting more often for Democrats than men are. So it's a split.
Well, that's very interesting, though, Chad, when you consider the number of Republican women that were put on the stage of the Republican convention.
And again, because there's a lot of things, Republicans have been attacked for this gap and this either created or real neglect of women. So I think they really wanted to put women out there and say, we do have women, and we want women to be a part of the party.
And they have ultimately been very successful women in the Republican Party.
There have been very successful women in the Republican Party, and they're trying to get more. And I think a lot of it also, there was the Todd Akin flap out of Missouri, and that was very detrimental. That did not help Republicans with women voters. With his whole comment on real rape and all that, so it did not go over.
You can't get pregnant if you were really raped.
Yes, you can't get pregnant. Yeah, so again, kind of using some.
I think that was an old wives' tale. I've done some study on this, and that's what I found out. I had no idea that that's actually an old wives' tale.
It's an old wives' tale. There is it's kind of a perversion of some science out there. I can't remember the number, but there's a number out there that says that rapes result in very few pregnancies or something along that line. So I think it's using the science, combining with a wives' tale, into one of the greatest political calamities, debacles probably is a good way to put it in our modern time.
I guess he didn't ascribe to the theory of think before you speak.
A lot of, again, going back to what I said before the break, script. You got to stick to the script. When you get off script, you have things like that happen. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, he
you know, but from an interview standpoint, if somebody constantly stays on script, exactly with the message, whether it's Romney, Obama, Congressman, you don't really get to know the person, do you?
There is some truth to that too, but sometimes there is a reason why they don't want you to know the real person, because you might find out.
Well, you might not vote for them.
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, you know, there's some politicians that are very good without a script. Some, it seems like this Aiken, Representative Aiken, I think he probably should have stayed on script, because that did not. He went from a seat that was virtually his. He had almost a 10-point lead in Missouri, and now it's a toss-up. So I mean, he's still doing fairly well considering the comment that he made. So.
Now, what do you think? I wanted to address just a little bit because you alluded to it. Clint Eastwood's extemporaneous speech that he did. What did you think of it?
Well, and it was kind of brilliant and ignorant at the same time. Not the speech itself. I thought it was really interesting because the Republicans on the convention, they said, you know, it's to be announced. So there was a lot of buzz. Right. It's like, oh, who's going to come and who's going to speak? But to allow him to kind of come, particularly not too long before Romney was supposed to speak, and then kind of give a speech which he had not written, and was just giving a speech.
He is an actor now.
He is an actor, but
extemporaneous.
It is yeah, he said but it was quite interesting. It caused quite a stir. And again, there was a funny political cartoon I saw recently online that said, you know, what is it? Both parties spent $100 million or more than that, actually, a lot more than that on both conventions, and the only thing people remember is that Clint Eastwood got up and gave that speech, or that and without a script. So.
You know, I heard he was on the news early this morning talking with somebody, and they asked him why he did it. He goes, because I'm 82, and what are they going to do to me?
Yeah.
And, you know, I thought that was really, when I heard that, I said, you know, somebody goes, why did he do that? And I said, because he's 80-some years old, and what are they going to do to him? Is it going to hurt his career? No.
I think I think his movie career is pretty solid at this point. And
exactly.
He's always kind of been, it seems like, he really didn't.
His own man.
He's his own man. He didn't really care what people thought of him. So he did his own thing. So it was I thought it was shrewd in one point that they kind of created some buzz, who's going to be there, but to kind of let him go out there and wing it, it was pretty dangerous from a political point of view. Because I mean, ultimately, I guess I don't think it hurt. I don't know that it helped at all. Ultimately, if we have a chance to talk about polling, I mean, Romney got no bounce, and there's only very few candidates since modern media where a candidate did not get a bounce from the polls. There was none to speak of. I guess Obama got a 3-point bounce, so not much, but still something.
Absolutely. Well, I thought it was interesting. I thought one of the failures of what they did not have him mic'd enough so that his voice was strong. Yeah, you know, I think that was part of the problem. To me, as a person that looks at this kind of stuff, if he'd been a little bit stronger of voice, he would have come across a little bit better.
True, and he's in his 80s, and he's kind of got a gruff, low voice to begin with. So yeah, perhaps there's a lot. There was a major.
But they probably didn't have a mic test, so there you go.
Probably. I mean, that was a major gamble. So I thought it was interesting that they created. I mean, I think it's they created some buzz. People were saying, "Well, who's going to speak? Who's going to speak?" And then, but have him up unscripted. That was quite a gamble. It doesn't seem to have paid off at all. But again, at the same time, it didn't hurt. And I think for the party faithful, I think there's still a lot of people. A lot of my friends that are Republicans were really enthused by that speech.
What I thought was it was very interesting to bring in out of the usually the liberal actors, that side of things, to bring one of them into the Republican was an interesting choice.
Yeah, there's, to be very frank, there's not many actors that that probably pulled for the Republican Party. So they probably didn't have a very large bench to go from. And Arnold Schwarzenegger had already gotten in trouble,
He's
so
negatory.
he was not going to help with women. So at that point, given what he had done, so he seemed like a good choice. So what was it? There was a movie that came out, The Expendables, and I think they're all older guys, that were action heroes in the 80s, and I think
they are expendable.
Yeah, expendable, and they're the only Republicans left, and so I think that are in movies. So, Clint Eastwood wasn't in that, but you have Arnold, Sylvester Stallone, Chuck Norris, who's out there.
And then harken back to Ronald Reagan. There you go.
Yes.
Hey, we're right here at Sharp Facets Gallery. I'm Ann Eller. I'm here with Dr. Chad Kinsella, having a good time this afternoon. Got a question or a comment about what we're talking about? Give us a call, 229-7984. That's 229-7984. That's right. We're right back here at Sharp Facets Gallery, right here on the 72 bypass. We are with Chad Kinsella today, having a good time talking politics, talking about all the things that have happened with the two conventions. Wanted to actually use this as kind of a roundup of everything that has been happening, and of course there are some new polls that are out there as far as the election. The thing I hate, Chad, is the fact that most likely South Carolina is not at anywhere other than a red state here, so there's not going to be much money flowing in. And as a radio advertiser, I'd like to see a little more controversy.
Well, I'm from the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, and you cannot turn on the TV, the radio, anything without getting a deluge of, ads for both candidates and even local and states. I mean, there's almost no commercials of anything else except for politics. So, yeah, it's funny. Outside of Northern Kentucky, Kentucky's the same way. Kentucky, in some ways, is even more red than South Carolina. So, I mean, if you're in Lexington, Louisville, there's not much going on. And it is the same here in South Carolina. There's just, and maybe if you're in Rock Hill or Myrtle Beach, because you're close to North Carolina, you might get some play. But other than that, it's really the money goes to those competitive states, and South Carolina is not one of them. We happen to border North Carolina, and then we're not too far away from Florida or Virginia. But the fact is, South Carolina is still a very red state.
Absolutely. So, those races are going to be big contested races. On what you have seen so far, I presume in your classes y'all are following this and trying to make decisions as to who's ahead and who's going to win. Have you gotten into any of that yet?
Yes, I am I guess it's almost like the horse race. Yeah, I follow polls every day. I try to look at the message.
Are you a betting man?
No, I'm not a betting man. I think I would put some money down maybe at this point, but I mean it's still a bet. So it's going to be close.
What do you see right now?
What do I see? Right now I would say Obama has an edge. I would not say that it's not a done deal like 2008. It's going to be razor thin. Right now he has an edge.
He should have an edge though as an incumbent president, correct?
Well, there's good and bad with being an incumbent. He's also an incumbent during a very slow economic period.
Exactly.
And again, so you hear that, is the economy stupid, or are you better off now than you were in 2008? And both parties have a slant on that. So he's got a lot of baggage at this point too. And then I think it would be.
But are we going to address that baggage? That is my question.
We'll see.
Because we haven't really seen it addressed, have we? In hard facts.
There's been a lot. It's kind of been, and again, I've spending most of my time in South Carolina. I've been kind of away from a lot of the commercials and stuff, but a lot of it seems to be very negative. And again, there were some people. I think it was some of the pundits kind of making fun of Obama, saying, we went from hope and change to, yes we can, but, and it was not my fault, it was somebody else's fault. So it's not been, and actually a lot of polls have shown that interest has really dropped off. They were saying that it's on par to be like the election in 1992. People are, by and large, especially independents, not very happy with either party at this point, and feel that neither party has done anything to help with the economy or address some of the key issues of the day. So again, and that's probably why perhaps both of those conventions were like they were. They were kind of the red meat for the parties. because I guess what they're saying is it's going to be a base election. And so they're trying to make their base excited, because I think those kind of independents that very small percentage of the population, but that could swing either way, a lot of them are completely turned off. And it's interesting, when we were doing voter registration over at Lander, for the first time I've ever done voter registration, I've had some people say, you make it a point to tell me that they were not going to register to vote and that they were not going to vote, period. And very kind of angrily pointed that out to me. They were saying, I'm not, I'm not registering and I'm not going to vote. And, very.
And did anybody point out the? I'm going to say the stupidity of that now, folks.
It's tough logic. But it's interesting because I have not really encountered that before in doing a voter registration anywhere. So there's kind of some anger in the system, and I was kind of feel the political winds by checking with my father-in-law and my dad, and both of them were not very pleased with either candidate at this point. And both of them, I know my father-in-law in particular has talked about voting third party. So
going to be right in, or
I don't. He's in Ohio, so I mean, it's going to. He's got some sway because he's in one of those key states, and Ohio is going to figure very prominent. But it's kind of they seem very unhappy with the choices at this point, and they're both very disgusted by both parties. So that seems to be kind of what a lot of the polling, particularly from Gallup, which is what I use a lot of the time, has shown, is that the turnout might be lower and the electorate is not very happy right now.
Yeah, I'm seeing one here. President Obama job approval. This was a Gallup one. I think it's as of today. Approve 50%, disapprove 44%. I was surprised. I was surprised to see that.
He had, that number was actually almost reversed before the convention. The convention, for whatever reason, my guess is that some of the people who might have been in his coalition or his side in 2008 maybe not very happy at this point, and maybe by some of the things that were said at the convention maybe turned them around. Of course, there's a joke that it's not the Obama bounce, but the Bill Clinton bounce. But a bounce is a bounce, so that works. But actually, that's kind of switched from this approve to disapprove, and there's already been some movement back from approve to disapprove. But yes, the convention really worked fairly well for the Democrats. Did not do much for Romney at all. No movement for him at all.
What do you think Romney needs to do to come out and be more of a force, be someone that maybe people take more notice of, shall we say? Because President Obama is so glib and so rock starish.
And that's a tough thing that I don't know that anybody could really kind of get away from, beat the rock star mantra that maybe Obama has. Romney, I guess he's kind of the all shucks. He's almost very, even though I guess he's from Michigan originally, so he's very Midwestern, I think.
I saw a special on Romney on CNN.
Mm-hmm.
They were running it, and his dad was very aggressive and outspoken.
Mm-hmm.
And then his mother got into politics, and his mother was the do it proper, everything had to be just right. And he was in high school at that point, and he helped his mom. And they're saying that his style of politics went against what his dad did and went more towards the way his mother was. Of course, his mother lost, but...
I would probably agree that's probably a very good analogy and kind of a good way to look at it. I mean, he does not run. It's a very aggressive campaign, and it's and I guess the one point where he did come out very strongly with this tragedy in Libya, there was a lot of blowback against him for coming out and saying some of the things that he said. So it almost, I wonder if the media reacted that way because that's just very on Romney, I guess, if you will, because he's run a very conservative campaign by and large, and it's a lot of the ugly mess, the commercials and stuff that he put out that are very negative attack ads have been done by like super PACs and other interest groups, and maybe not as much. See, he's kind of run a very conservative campaign so far, and he's been very criticized for it. There's been a lot of op-eds and some, even Republicans have said, this should be easy. And I was talking to one of my friends the other day. It's like, he seems like he would have an easy time to go to the American people and say, things aren't working, we need to change course. But
Hold that thought. This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. Okay, we're going to hold this over for a second. Go ahead.
Sure, and just not a very aggressive campaign. It doesn't seem like he's very laid back.
Don't you think he needs to be a little more aggressive to come out on top here?
Yes, definitely. Because right now, the polls are razor thin. If you look at most of them, and it looks like you have the Real Clear Politics, which is one they take a kind of a synopsis of all the different polls, and
sure.
And really, it's razor thin in Virginia. North Carolina and Missouri are probably two quote unquote battleground states that have kind of swayed in his direction, and I think are fairly safe for him at this point. And then Pennsylvania is another story that's I don't think that's even a battleground state. But other than that, you have Virginia, Colorado, Nevada,
and they're
Hampshire.
saying that so many, whoever it is, that those are the states that are actually going to make up the election.
Ultimately,
because of the Electoral College and everything.
Well, it's to use kind of. Shouldn't use war analogies, but it's kind of like trench warfare essentially. It is a game of inches. So you have the Republicans have like the Sky West, they have the Deep South, and the battle is in kind of the Upper South, or at least with Virginia and a little bit in North Carolina. And really, it's huge in the Midwest. You have Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin. So this is the big battlegrounds. And now Colorado is out there, and even Nevada, which used to be very reliably Republican, but now is not. And all of them, they're all within kind of this margin of error. And the margin of error is this idea that there's, they can do these polls, but they have to allow for a little bit of error. And so now, it's within this. It's really a toss-up, and it's very close within many of these states. However, in some of the key ones, like Ohio, right now, Obama has the edge. And Florida, another one, is very contentious. So very razor thin.
All right, so if we were betting on the election today, who is going to be the next president of the United States? Dr. Chad Kinsella.
If I were betting, and this is not an endorsement of any kind, but if I were betting, I would bet on Obama at this point. Right now,
I'm writing this down because I'll have you back again. Okay,
yeah,
it's 9/17 Obama. Okay, go ahead.
Well, just as an aside, there was a recent article about the fact that political scientists are terrible forecasters. So it would be just my luck that I'm going to say this now and for everybody to hear, and I'll have to come back afterwards and explain why I was so wrong. But anyway, right now he does have an edge in all of those, almost all of the battleground states, from Florida up to Ohio to Michigan and Wisconsin. And unless there's a change, he's going to win. It's going to be razor thin, not like 2008, but I think that he will win. And right now, particularly with the coming out of the convention and getting that bounce, the political winds have kind of shifted in his favor. And if things don't change, if Romney doesn't get more aggressive or find something that resonates with the American people very soon, particularly in those battleground states, it's going to be thin. It's going to be a razor thin margin, but you don't get anything for that, particularly in American politics. So it's a winner take all system, and second place, doesn't matter how close it is, you get an attaboy.
Still second place. Yep.
So that's about it. That's ultimately what I see as of right now.
Okay, we have the debates coming up. The first one is on October 3rd. They say a lot of people will be watching these debates to try to figure out which candidate is really the best.
And the debates can be an instance where Romney, or Obama could lose the election because of the debates, or Romney could win. It depends upon their performance in the debates. And it's funny, minor things make up how people determine who won, or
how about Paul Ryan on the ticket for the Republicans with Joe Biden here, a good old Joe, and then we've got Paul Ryan here.
I was joking with some of my students that I had to go to the Democratic National Convention because I was going to take over for Biden, because he had right before then he had several different gaffes, which he's very prone to.
Do you think those are planned? I think they're planned. I'm sorry. I think he practices this till they come out as a gaffe.
He kind of reminds me of one of those guys, and I have some friends, and sometimes it's like, you think something is funny, and it's like you deliver your punchline. I have this happen a lot in my classes and my students. It's like, so you deliver your punchline, and it's crickets. And it's just like, did he really just say that? And so I think, I think Joe Biden, he may have a different type of sense of humor, or, trying to get people fired up, and he just, for some reason,
just backfires on him.
Backfires on him. I always feel bad for him, because it seems like he's trying, but it just doesn't come out quite right. But with Paul Ryan on the ticket, it was interesting. I guess I always liked, Sarah Palin was so interesting because it was such a
contrast.
Contrast, but it was so interesting when it happened. It was like, who is this lady, and what is she? Nobody knew anything about her. So it was really, it brought some interest to the McCain ticket at that time. Some of it not so good ultimately, but it was interesting. I think it was a safe move, and I think it also reflects the fact. I thought maybe he would go for like a Condoleezza Rice, or somebody who could kind of help substantiate his claim to have knowledge of, or some sort of expertise in foreign policy. But by the fact of going to Paul Ryan, again, I think that framed the debate. It's domestic policy, it's the economy, it's debt. And so I think by doing that, again, he wanted to continue to frame the debate about the economy, about debt, and about some of those things.
About the fact of him being a businessman.
And a businessman, and so I think that worked for him, and he didn't bring anybody from foreign policy, and really up until this unfortunate event in Libya, foreign policy has been conspicuously very absent from the discussion from both camps, really. So it's been very, it hasn't been discussed a lot. So I'll be interested to see now that that's happened. Do they have the muscle, if you will, to kind of still say that we can do domestic policy, but Paul Ryan and I can also do foreign policy. So that's kind of the test that hasn't really happened yet.
But just as a quick rebuttal, the very fact that you can bring people in who do know foreign policy, you can have people in there that help you with that. If you don't have a basis on the economy, it's pretty hard to, even with help from other people, to bring that around.
It definitely, and it was probably a safe move, and it was probably a smart move, because he's keeping the focus on the economy and the budget, and those are two issues that
the American public is passionate about.
The American public is passionate about, and those are some places where I think they might be able to win some of those debates, given some of the problems. So, but it's interesting. Obama brought on Joe Biden not for his speaking abilities, but because he is an expert in.
He's humorous.
Funny to some people, I guess. He tries, and we'll give him credit for that. But he's a foreign policy expert. George W. Bush, when he came in, he didn't get Biden also. Delaware is a blue state, and it only carries 3 electoral votes. So Biden. The only reason really Biden is on there is because he's a foreign policy expert. And again, with Hillary Clinton's 3 a.m. phone call, he wanted to make sure that people knew that was something important. George W. Bush, a lot of the commentary on him, he's a governor, he has no foreign policy experience. Brought on Dick Cheney, who has a lot of foreign policy experience. Guy from Wyoming, a very reliably red state. So so it's very interesting that the last 2 presidents, felt weak in those areas and brought on vice presidential candidates that kind of bolstered that claim that they have somebody very close by. And Romney, although wasn't really a critic, he wasn't criticized for it, but he brought on Paul Ryan, and not a foreign policy expert, so kind of bucked that trend. But again, that's where the focus is. People, as things begin to wind down in Afghanistan, which I'm hoping they do, and a brother-in-law who's in the Marines, and he just, with all the things going on, just got caught up. But the focus is on domestic, not foreign policy. So probably it was ultimately a wise move. And Ryan is a very good campaigner. And I thought it was very smart. Medicare has not been a traditional Republican, something that they do well. And he went down and he talked about Medicare, and he brought his mom out there.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't want to hurt your own mother, so we're going to make Medicare stronger, and my mom takes Medicare, and she's going to like it. So there's some, and he's a very good campaigner. He's a younger guy. He's from the Midwest, so I think that those are some things that help.
Absolutely. Well, Chad, it has always been interesting to have you on board with us here today. Thanks so much for coming out today and giving us a view of the whole issue. We'll look forward to having you back on as we get closer to the election, because you know what? It's going to be here before you know it.
It is my pleasure. It's always an honor to be on, and it's very fun. This is what I do. I love to talk about politics, so I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, Dr. Chad Kinsella over there at Lander. If anybody wants to give you a call, how should they call you?
They can call my office. It's 388-8302, and an area code 864. I always give that out because I'm still getting used to the South Carolina system. So.
Absolutely. All right, Chad, thanks so much for being here today. This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. Oh, I guess we talked right through the news, but hey, you can hear it again at 6 o'clock, and we have had a good time here today. We'll have a podcast of this on the website, and of course you'll be able to hear this audio on our website. That's WCRS1450am.net. That's going to do it for us. Take it away with some words from our sponsors. Bye-bye, everybody.